Fire up the Barbie and grab yourself a cold one, because today we're going down under and taking a look at one of the biggest viral sensations to ever come out of Australia. I'm talking about Corey Worthington and his infamous house party that he threw back in 2008. In 2008, 16-year-old Corey Worthington from Melbourne, Australia went viral after a huge house party he threw caught the attention of the Australian media. While his party was certainly remarkable in scale, what made Corey special were his interactions with the news media after this happened.
Corey, thanks for joining us. The only question that I can think to ask is, what were you thinking?
I wasn't really.
And there's many out there that believe that the movie Project X was directly inspired by these events. Today I'm going to tell you guys the story of Corey and his party and what happened to him after he became famous because of it. Before we get started, I want to thank The Ridge for sponsoring yet another one of my videos. They make these sleek metallic wallets that go in your front pocket. On the Ridge website, you'll find that their wallets come in a variety of metals and materials, from aluminum to carbon fiber to titanium. And there's plenty of colors to choose from as well. I've got a 10% off link for you guys in the description box. That's ridge.com/surf. And use code SURF on the website to save 10% off your order, and that includes free worldwide shipping. Now, without any further ado, let's get on to Corey's story. This story begins in early January of 2008 at Corey's parents' house on Galloway Drive, found in the Narre Warren suburb of Melbourne, Australia. Fresh off the heels of celebrating New Year's, 16-year-old Corey Worthington had a devious plan up his sleeve, and when executed would certainly start off 2008 with a bang. This plan was to throw a giant house party when his parents went out of town for a vacation they had planned in the first few weeks of the month. And the time for his parents' departure had finally come. His mother Joanne and stepfather Stephen were about to leave the house for their Gold Coast, Queensland vacation, but just before leaving, his parents, likely cognizant of the temptations a 16-year-old teen feels with the house to themselves, warned Corey not to throw any parties. He would assure them that nothing of the sort would happen, but just as their car got out of line of sight, his plans were set in motion. With the family home to himself and a limited amount of time at his disposal, he would quickly get to work with planning the party and sending out invitations. He texted everyone he knew, took to social media sites like Facebook and MySpace, and even used archaic instant messaging services like MSN to get the word out. Anybody who saw this invitation was invited, and that invitation read as follows. Oh yeah, party at mine, Saturday 12th January. Bring your own chicks and grog. No knives, Rents will crack it at me. This invitation was sent out just a few days before January 12th, and there was really no way for Corey to know how many people were going to show up because he didn't utilize any kind of RSVP format when sending these out. With that said, he certainly wanted a high turnout, and when the afternoon of Saturday, January the 12th finally came around, well, that's exactly what he got. As the late afternoon, early evening time came around, dozens upon dozens of booze-equipped teenage partygoers began showing up at Corey's Galloway Drive residence. Initially, the two-story home, which sported a large backyard, proved capable of hosting such a crowd. But eventually, the evening began to chug along, and after the sun set, the number of attendees began to surge, and the party was quickly getting out of hand. The dozens of people would turn into hundreds, peaking at an estimated 500 people. The party eventually spilled out into the street and his surrounding neighbors' lawns. This event had completely exceeded Corey's expectations as far as the number of attendees went. And while this number of 500 people may be a bit concerning from an outside perspective, Corey couldn't have been happier with the turnout. He was the man of the hour and decided to let the party go on organically. Now, while Corey may have been satisfied with the current state of affairs, his neighbors, they definitely weren't. The noise coming from Corey's party could be compared to that of a rave, and with some attendees causing lawn damage to adjacent properties, neighborhood residents would soon notify police of the out-of-control party situation. In the early morning hours of Sunday, just as the party was at its peak, police would arrive and attempt to shut down the event after receiving calls. On their arrival to Galloway Drive, they were met with what had essentially become a neighborhood block party with close to 500 drunk teenagers running amok. Police tried their best to get people to leave the area, but they were completely overwhelmed due to the sheer numbers of belligerent teens present. And it was also reported that the partygoers were throwing beer bottles at the cops and their vehicles. Backup would be required. Police canine units would arrive and be utilized to frighten off attendees. And shortly after that, a police helicopter was seen hovering over Corey's house with spotlights shining down on the chaotic scene. This added layer of police presence definitely did the trick, and with a chopper flying overhead, this was enough to convince partygoers to leave in fear of being arrested. Finally, around 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, the last of Corey's partygoers had been snuffed out, and the party had officially come to a close. Corey was arrested and questioned by police, but was released after a short time later in the morning. So let's discuss the aftermath. The inside of Corey's house was in shambles. Car windshields were smashed, the neighborhood was littered with beer bottles and cigarette butts, and some neighbors had claimed that mailboxes, lawn decor, and turf had been damaged. So yeah, Corey's in some pretty deep shit, right? Well, surprisingly, he wasn't facing any immediate legal consequence from the party. Rather, police decided to leave Corey to the wrath of his parents, who at the time were potentially facing up to $20,000 in fines from damages caused by the partygoers. Now, with that said, Corey wouldn't notify his parents about what happened. Instead, they were informed of this party almost an entire day later by police. After learning this new information, they tried to call and contact Corey, but he was ignoring them. Turns out that after Corey got released by the police, he went into hiding and was extremely difficult to track down. While Corey was on the run, word of this party spread and it was quickly picked up by the Australian media. Within 24 hours, the story blew up in the Australian media and Corey Worthington and his colossal party were making headlines. Many outlets sought to get an interview with the then on the run Corey, and surprisingly, he was completely on board with doing interviews. One of these interviews in particular would serve to create almost a rebellious symbol out of Corey Worthington. That interview being the one between him and Leela McKinnon from Current Affair, which went live on Monday, January the 14th.
Corey, thanks for joining us. The only question that I can think to ask is, what were you thinking?
I wasn't really.
Did your parents say you could have a party?
No.
Well, 500 people turned up, the air wing of the police force, the dog squad, your neighbours' cars were being destroyed. What have your parents had to say, Corey?
I haven't really talked to them because every time they call, I don't answer.
Why don't you take your glasses off so we can see you? And then apologise to your neighbours for frightening them.
Nah, I'll leave these on. Nah, I like them.
Your parents were out of town, you put out the invitation, you started it. Why don't you make a grown-up decision now and accept responsibility, take off those glasses and apologise to everybody that you frightened, to the police who were forced to retreat and whose cars have been damaged, and to the community who've had to pay for this? Take off your glasses and apologise to us.
I'll say sorry, but I'm not taking off my glasses.
Why not?
Because they're famous.
Because your glasses are famous.
Yeah.
Okay, Corey, we've got to wrap this up, but what would you say to other kids who were thinking of partying when their parents are out of town?
Get me to do it for you.
Get you to do it for you, not don't do it.
Nah, get me to do it for you. Best party ever so far. That's what everyone's been saying, so...
Well, we've got to go, but I suggest you go away and take a good long hard look at yourself.
I have. Everyone has. They love it.
This interview was essentially the start of Corey Worthington's public narrative, and people would certainly speak up with strong opinions in regard to his actions and behavior. Some thought that he got off too easy and symbolized a generation of ungrateful, out-of-control youth, while others respected him for the rager of a party he threw and admired his unapologetic demeanor when confronted about it. Nonetheless, all eyes were on Corey, and there would soon be other Australian media sources that would join the fray and criticize him for his actions. But the reaction from the internet would be much more positive. Shortly after Current Affair cut the interview, it went viral on YouTube and word spread of Corey and his party. Online communities would pop up in support of Corey. The most notable of these was the Facebook group Corey Worthington is a Dead Set Legend. While this Facebook group no longer exists and I can't find an archived version of it, it's likely that the sentiment of these users echoed that of the comment section in the interview that he did with Current Affair. That kid is the man. Anyone who can throw a party like that and then have the balls to play it cool on TV, like that deserves a handshake. LOL, I wish my shades were famous. This kid is a beast. He's got a wonderful attitude about this. I would freak out. Coolest guy I've seen on YouTube. I've now found a person better than Chuck Norris. At this point in the story, it's been about 72 hours since Corey's party ended, and this was about the time that his parents got back home finally. But Corey still hadn't come home. Rather, he'd been couch surfing all week and only made himself available for interviews. Speaking of interviews, another current affair reporter would catch up with Corey at Frankston Beach, which was several miles away from his house. And this interview made it even more clear that despite all the negative media criticism he was receiving, he had no plans of apologizing or backing down.
Why haven't you gone home?
I don't really want to. I'm going out tomorrow, so seeing mates and stuff.
Partying's more important?
Well, not more important, but I'm not going to go home if they're going to go all crazy at me, so...
It's not just about partying, is it? There's other reasons you don't want to go home.
Well, no, not really. Just sort of rather go out with my mates and stuff.
You don't want to face the music?
No, not just yet.
If you could do it again, would you handle it any differently?
Probably not.
Has it been fun?
Yeah, it's been pretty funny, yeah.
You'd do it all again?
Oh, I'm having another one in 2 weeks. Not at home, but have another big party 2 weeks.
You're having another big party. You said last night if you had some advice for young teenagers, it'd be for you to hold the parties for them.
Yeah.
You want to do it again?
Yeah.
Where are you going to hold this one?
Nary somewhere, in a hall, but this time probably.
Oh, go shake his hand. There you go.
Hello.
Yeah. I wasn't at the party, I wish I was.
I've always had a bit of an attitude, like, towards, like, older, like my parents and stuff, but that's just me. Like, I'm not going to change. I'd rather just stay young, have fun. I'm not going to change just for anyone, really.
Sounds like a little badge of honour.
Yeah.
Now, despite all the tough talk from Corey, he would finally return back home just after a week had passed. So what was the punishment issued by his parents? Well, he since stated that his punishment included fixing up the damages caused to the home, and he also got a load of additional chores for some time. But that was pretty much it. Seems like he kinda got off easy. As far as the $20,000 fine proposed to his parents, it's never been reported that they actually had to pay this. So as far as I can tell, his entire family actually got off pretty much scot-free. At this point, it had been just over a week since the party, and the media frenzy would begin to die down. Thanks to the media, millions knew about Corey and his huge party, and this cemented him as like an Australian youth hero. But this isn't the end of the story, because the infamy gained from throwing this party would ultimately create Corey a career in entertainment. See, in the weeks following the party, Corey was being inundated with requests via social media from other Australians seeking to have him as a paid host for their own parties. And there were club promoters reaching out to him as well who saw potential in the kid as a DJ. Corey, completely on board with the concept of throwing parties for a living, would be picked up by famous PR man Max Markson, and the two would work together for years to come on a multitude of entrepreneurial ventures, the primary of which was booking Corey to host parties across the country. As time passed, Corey and his 2008 party would become the stuff of legends. And not only did it change his life personally, the event had effects that were felt throughout pop culture for years to come. One example of this is the case of Project X, released in 2012. Project X was a movie about some teenage kids that throw a giant party, it gets completely out of hand, damage and destruction ensues, police show up, legends are born, yada yada. It's been heavily rumored online that this movie drew inspiration from Corey's 2008 party. While this has never actually been confirmed by anyone involved with the film's production, I could imagine that the insane story of Corey's party influenced some of the movie's direction, at least subconsciously. Now, throughout the early 2010s, updates on Corey's personal life became rather scarce. But when he finally did decide to show face to media again in 2015, it was clear that he had done a good deal of growing up. This is an interview filmed with him at Studio 10 where he candidly discusses the event and comes across as somewhat apologetic for his actions.
Hey, Corey.
Hello.
You've taken off your glasses.
Yes, got rid of the yellow hair.
Yeah, I like that colour. And the glasses, you still got your glasses?
Yeah, they're around. These are new edition, Bali edition.
Now, Corey, everyone remembers your interview with Layla McKinnon after
Yes.
the party on A Current Affair. What do you think? What goes through your mind when you watch that back?
I don't know. I was 16. Like, it was all just fun to me. It was just a really, really good time, I guess. It's just crazy how after 7 years it's still going. Yeah, well, I think
Just having a good time.
Yeah, well, that's it. We're just having a good time. It did get a little bit out of hand, but...
Well, how out of hand did it get?
Oh, with the cops getting
police
called,
cars
the
damaged?
police...
The cops are called why? Because it was just noisy?
No, because there was just teens all over the joint. There was like 500 people just in the street and just partying hard and... Yeah.
Are you
Booze, that's
reformed
it.
now, Corey?
In a way, I'm reformed. I've grown up. I'm 24 years old now, but I still like to party. Like,
What was the trigger that made you change? What spurred you on to change? Just growing up?
just growing up, really. Yeah, just growing up and just maturing and trying to turn it into a bit more of just fun, I guess. Trying to, I don't know how to really say it, make a bit of money from it, I guess, and be a bit more smarter about it instead of just being that little brat.
It seems at this point Corey's troublemaking days were over. He would later get married that same year. After getting married, Corey disappeared again for some time until finally reappearing on television again in 2018, surprisingly as a contestant on Australian Ninja Warrior, where he showed off some pretty impressive physical feats. That's the story of Corey's party. The story of where a kid throws a party when his parents are out of town and becomes an Australian legend in the process. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comment section, guys, and let me know who or what you want me to talk about next. Major shout outs to my patrons, I appreciate you guys. Wavy Web Surf out. Peace.